It's 6 o'clock somewhere. I'd like to call the meeting of the Crestview Charter Review Committee to order. The first item for consideration is approval of the minutes from June 13, 2017. But first of all, I would like for Joshua to introduce himself. He missed the meeting last week. If you will, please.
Yes, thank you. Name is Josh Molyneux, local Crestview resident. I'm a vice chairman of the Crestview Housing Authority. That's the public housing and the Section 8 programs. Looking forward to getting started on reviewing our charter.
Thank you very much. The first item for consideration is approval of the minutes from June 13, 2017. Is there action?
Mr. Chair, I have a motion to approve the minutes with one, just want to make note, reference on page 2. It was the instructions from Mr. Howley. The way he'd actually wrote it, the way it's written in here is actually inaccurate with the actual sunshine law. So in here, the way it articulates is that we are not able to speak with anyone unless we're in here. And we're actually bound by sunshine law, which means we can't speak with each other nor the elected officials, but we can speak with the public.
Keep in mind that your minutes come directly from the recording that is taken place. So if it's a misstatement in the meeting, then it will need to be, even though it's a misstatement, the minutes would reflect it's a misstatement and needs clarification. So.
Okay, thank you, Teresa. Are there other comments? Do we have a second with one stipulation? Come on, we need a second.
Do we have a second?
Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, thanks for a second. Any question or comment from the committee? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is carried. The next item for consideration is a review of the mission statement and scope of duties. Teresa?
The Crestview Charter Review Committee, our mission, as stated by the City Council, is to examine the City of Crestview's current structure of government, to examine other forms of government, other forms of municipal government, to evaluate the same, and finally, to make recommendations back to the council within 90 days as to what structure of government the committee believes that the city should utilize. There is an extension there if we need it after and request it after the 90-day time frame. Our purpose of the committee is an advisory board to the council. The committee is established for the purpose of examining our current structure of government, to examine other forms of municipal government, to make recommendations back to the council as to what structure they believe the city should have, and any changes that would be needed to accomplish and facilitate this decision. Our scope and timetable. The committee is to review and examine the charter, the current structure, examine other forms of government structure, and to examine the most efficient form to meet the needs of the city of Crestview now and to move forward in the future. They may hold public meetings to achieve this mission. The committee shall adopt a meeting schedule, which we have done and is posted, as necessary to achieve this purpose. All meetings shall be advertised on the city's website and a notice on the meeting board in the hallway of the city hall. And this is 1 week in advance of meetings. The meeting shall be provided to the local media. And finally is to provide a written recommendation back to the county to the council within 90 days unless an extension is requested and approved. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Teresa. Any question on the I guess you would say presentation of that, but it's very important. It's trying to keep us, the committee out of added problems with the sunshine law.
Teresa, can we request they all speak up into their microphones? It's gonna help your minute taking and our broadcast.
Yeah.
Please speak and get close to the mic if you need to.
Teresa, the next item, or the committee, the next item for consideration is review of the sunshine law.
Yes, sir, we're going to briefly review that. We have some confusion in that, so we really need to review it as it's most important for an ad hoc committee to apply by the letter of it. We're basically going to summarize the statement from Mr. Hawley. The Sunshine Law, being Section 286.011 of the Florida statutes, requires meeting of the committee be open to the public, reasonable notices for such meetings be given, and minutes be taken and properly recorded. Because the committee is subject to the Sunshine Law, committee members cannot communicate with each other outside the public meetings to discuss any matters concerning the charter review or other matters that may come before the committee. Also, committee members cannot communicate with city council members to discuss any matters concerning the charter review or other matters that may come before the committee. Communications include talking to each other in person, phone calls, emails, text messages, and other forms of communication. That also includes social media. In addition, members of the committee are not allowed to use a person to go between the committee with one board member to another. Any violation of the Sunshine Law may result in penalties against the person who violates the law. In addition, if a Sunshine Law is violated and an action is taken by the committee, and in turn the city council acts on that recommendation for the committee, the action by the city council will be null and void. So,
Excuse me. I think you misread that last sentence, unless I misunderstood. You said.
in addition, the Sunshine Law is violated. Any action taken by the committee or the city council acting on the recommendations of the committee.
Yeah, you said council. I think,
Yeah.
at that point.
If this,
Anyway.
yeah, if actions taken by the committee or in turn the city council acting on the recommendation of the committee,
Yeah.
the action itself by the city council will be null and void. He doesn't state it completely like that, but that is exactly
okay.
what it is.
Okay.
Any violation found with this committee can void any action made by the city council, who relies on the recommendation of this committee. Our concern is the conduit, where you have committee members interacting with the public. When a public approaches you and you interact with that person, and in discussion, and you relay your personal thoughts, feelings, anything that has been, takes place, decision-making process, something that has not been revealed in a public meeting, you relay that to them. That person steps over and talks to another board member and relays that, receives what they say, receives it, and also relays what you have said to them. That is indeed a violation to the Sunshine Law. So it's very tight process if you interact with the public. You need to be aware. The public can ask you, can give you information, can give you their feelings. In turn, you cannot express back any item that has not been expressed inside of a public meeting. This is a very treacherous slope, so it's my suggestion that you watch very carefully your interactions with the public, because that simple conduit violation could null and void what we're trying to accomplish.
If I may.
Yes.
Ms. Teresa, I believe that's open to interpretation, because it's if the committee member is attempting to surreptitiously utilize a person as a go-between. I have reached out to an attorney on this, and me or another committee member speaking and sharing their opinion with the community, which we're charged with doing, some recommendations for the 25,000 people, like you stated, we're in charge of presenting for, we're able to share our opinion. The use of a go-between is if you're trying to do it illegally.
Exactly, and that's what I'm saying. There's a legal process, and then there's one that violates the Sunshine Law.
I just
And
want to make sure that everybody understands
There's,
that you
there,
can
that's
share
what I'm saying.
your
It's
opinion.
it's a very slippery item there. Your best scenario would be to invite the public to a public meeting, so therefore everything is out in the public and you're completely within the sunshine. So, and that's really the only portion of the area that Mr. Hawley went over with that needed to be reflected back to you, as we will be keeping the public records, and we have already done the organizational part. So,
Thank you, Teresa.
Mhm.
The next item on the agenda is Jack Dorman of J.E. Dorman and Associates. Mr. Dorman is the City of Crestview consultant relating to growth management questions, our comprehensive plan, land development regulations, and the like. So at this time, I'd like to call on Mr. Jack Dorman.
Good evening.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to getting to know you, some of you. I know some of you, but like to see everyone. I'm not sure what you need from me, other than, I guess, a little background on the council manager forum. That's where I have most of my expertise, although I have worked with many local governments, municipalities, and counties that employ a variety of forms of self-governance. My municipal career, I've spent some time as a planner, of course, but my municipal career involved 3 cities, Manassas, Park, Virginia, Culpeper, Virginia, and I was the first city manager in Destin. All 3 of those communities use the council manager form of government. There are variations, of course. Virginia has a somewhat different enabling law for municipalities than Florida does. But in a nutshell, in one community, the manager was a strong administrative position, but had to get approval on certain items, appointing a police chief, for example. And if, depending on the number and scope of the items, that's considered by the International City Management Association as being a general management position. The second community I was with, the manager basically did everything that the council told him to do. In fact, we had a 9-member council plus a mayor, and they met whether they needed to or not 11 times a year. They had 3 employees. They had the manager, the attorney, and the treasurer, the finance person. Everyone else worked directly for the manager. And they, without boring you with a long story, they got that system put in place in the 1920s, and Culpeper in 1984 celebrated its 225th anniversary as an incorporated municipality. If you remember, the country celebrated its 200th in '76. It was originally chartered by the Virginia House of Burgesses as a municipality. So they've had a long time to get things well organized and well run. In fact, when I first showed up there as the manager, I had one basic bit of guidance: don't mess it up. It worked. And then when Destin incorporated back in, the vote occurred in December of '84. The first city council took their seats in January of 1985, and I came on board as the first city manager in late March. That was both Culpeper and Destin were tremendous learning opportunities for me, for any professional in the business. In Culpeper, you found out right away how things should be done. And in Destin, we had a blank piece of paper. Let's make it a city government. It's worked out pretty good all the way around. So clearly, I'm slanted, if you will, towards the council manager form of government. I believe it to be the most efficient. Now, does it have pitfalls? Of course it does. But I challenge you to name a form of local government that does not have at least one bear trap in there somewhere. But a qualified manager taking care of business is, in my opinion, the most efficient way to go. Mr. Connor asked me a question 7 or 8 years ago, unless I don't remember, I guess for the last committee y'all had. And he asked me a question. Mike Wing might have been here then, or Brenda. But anyway, the question was, what do you think about our form of government? Or not our form of government. What do you think about our government? And I said, well, I think Crestview works extremely well in spite of your charter, in spite of your form. Because quite candidly, in my opinion, the charter needs some attention. That's just one man, one person. But I think you, and obviously you tend to agree, you wouldn't be sitting here. You have been blessed over the years that I've been here, and I've been here serving the city since the fall of '89. You've been blessed with quality people, as you are today, that were able to work within the significant constraints embodied, not necessarily on purpose, but they're there in your charter. So I think your form of government, if you can continue to keep and retain the quality people you have been doing at the staff level, and fix the form to whatever makes you comfortable, I think that will improve the city of Crestview's efficiency, organizational structure, probably finances, and all the other things that go along with that. I could talk for the next 3 hours. I understand y'all want to get out of here by 7:30. So rather than me just sit up here and lecture, and I've also, just so you know, I've worked with county commissions, city commission. Valpy has a city commission. Y'all may be aware of that. I've worked with a number of counties. All of them have commissions in Florida, not in every state, but in Florida. I've worked with the city of Mobile for a while over in Alabama. And in those days, they don't have this anymore. They had a city commission. They did away with it. The abuses got pretty significant, and a couple of folks did some hard time that were on the commission. And the voters said, enough of that. So they have, I believe, I'm not sure if it's strong mayor or council manager. I don't recall, because I hadn't lived over there since the late 70s, but or early 70s, I should say. But anyway, that's an example of a fairly large city, as well as a fairly small city, Valpy, using a commission form of government. The general management form is fine. There's nothing wrong with having the selection of certain key personnel, department heads, as it were, being verified, if you will, by the governing body, the city council. That's not a bad thing to do. I didn't really find it necessary in Culpeper, but the only department head that I employed, other than, well, there were two, other than the ones that were there when I arrived, was a new police chief and a new public works director. The police chief went to another community, and the public works director at that time retired. So it was pretty easy to find a good chief in Culpeper. That was not a hard thing to do. And the public works director that I employed, I was promoted from within. So the council going through an action of approving that would have not amounted to much. On the other hand, had there been a plethora of those, it could have been a valuable tool for me, or for the manager, I should say, not me. But that's basically my thinking. There's an organization called the International City County Management Association, ICMA, and we have members. I'm a full member. We have members all over the world. It's international. And they can provide you, if they haven't already, I'm not sure the source of some of your stuff, but they can provide the city or the committee with a lot of good information on the specifically on the council manager forum, because it's an organization of managers. But and that's I've noticed in your materials that it's the most popular forum in Florida. It's also the most popular nationwide. There's 4,000 some odd local governments in the country, and over 3,000 of them use the council manager form of government. Last statistics I saw, which was several years ago. But so I guess I'm not trying to sell you on the council manager form. I'm just trying to explain from my perspective the benefits of that form. Maybe the best thing to do, Mr. Connor, would be to just answer questions.
Yes, that's correct. And thank you, Mr. Dorman, for that brief presentation. Anyone have any questions for Mr. Dorman? Yes, sir.
Mr. Dorman, thank you
Yes, sir.
for coming and speaking with us
Oh,
this
my
evening.
pleasure.
You answered a majority of what I actually did have, so I'm going to kind of mix these together a little bit and
No
see.
problem.
As you stated, you lean towards city manager.
Yes.
If there was a con, what would that be? What pops out to you? Well, not just city manager, to the various
The council manager?
to the various three though. If the major pro and the major con, if you
Well, the number one con for any of them is an insufficient background check on whoever you're going to hire. You've got to make sure that the person you're hiring is the person you think you're hiring is in fact the person you're hiring. All forms of government can be abused. There's no such thing as a perfect system or even person. But so I think the number one thing is making sure you got the right person at the right time in the right place. And that's true for not just for the manager, but for almost all positions in local government. As one of the ways to overcome that is the general management form, where the manager still does most everything as in your handout, but it's classified slightly differently by ICMA because the manager is not. He is still the chief executive. He is still, or she, is still the individual who is responsible for day-to-day operations, day-to-day problems, solutions, etc. But certain decisions are reviewed at the dais. And in some ways that's a pro, and in some ways that's a con. As you all know, when people sitting up here, the governing bodies are elected positions, and politics often gets in colors certain individuals' thinkings. I've had personal experience with that in every community, not just where I worked, but where I provided service. I've seen that happen. It's never a majority of the governing body, or it never has been in my case that I've witnessed, but there are those individuals out there who would rather make a political decision for a hiring or a firing or an action of some sort than a reasonable what's best for the community decision. That's a con. As to the commission form, I have found that to be pretty cumbersome. It's not much different from what you have right now in Crestview. The names are different, but the results are close to the same. The commission form you have 3 or 5 commissioners depending, and each commissioner typically is assigned an area to be responsible for. Maybe it's public works, maybe it's public safety, maybe it's library and educational opportunities, whatever it happens to be. Again, the expertise that you might want from a leader of those functions may or may not exist in the elected official. The elected official is elected because he got the most votes, or she got the most votes, not because they were necessarily the most qualified. Now, I have a tremendous respect for the voters. I am one. And if the voter says Ellis Connor is the best suited for a job, you're going to got to go somewhere to prove that he's not, in my opinion. Or Miss McKinney, or Mr. Strickland. Pick a person. If the voters choose them, it's going to convince me that that was a bad choice. I've got to see something, you know. But that doesn't mean the bad choice doesn't occur, because it does. I think that's the biggest drawback to the commission form. It's not that radically different from what you have. It's called different, but it's really not the way y'all operate. Except this council doesn't have individual authority over departments. You just have you have apartment heads reporting to everyone, except for the mayor and the police department. So, I mean, I'm talking to the choir. You all know this. So, does that answer your question a little bit?
Yes, I appreciate that, sir.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I heard the word efficiency, you know, and city manager being the most efficient. Could you speak to some of the specific efficiencies created by having a city manager in place?
Well, you have one person who's responsible to the council and to the staff, and obviously ultimately to the citizenry. But you represent the citizenry through making sure the council has what they need to do their jobs. If the manager decides that he needs to fire a sergeant on the police department or a truck driver in public services, he does it. If, on the other hand, up here or in some of those other forms of government, if they decide they want to fire not a low-level worker, but a fairly responsible worker, typically it's going to come up to the council. And I'm not sure that's sufficient. Because what does the council know about Joe Jones's work as a sergeant, or Frank Smith's work as a truck driver, or Teresa Gaylord's work as a draftsperson? I mean, that's not what y'all or they normally concern yourselves with. They're policy makers. They're not administrators. They're the council, the governing body of any local government should be focused on policy and the tools necessary for the administration to achieve the policy. That's what I mean by efficient.
Thank you.
It also is less expensive. The manager might get paid a tidy sum, or he or she may not, but the savings are not in whether you pay the manager an extra few thousand a year or whatever. The savings come across the board from managing, properly managing the resources of the community.
Thank you, Jack. The next question, ma'am.
Mr. Dorman, how long were you the city manager of Destin?
4.5, almost 5 years.
So from 85 to about 90,
80, fall of 89.
89? When were the seeds planted? Destin exploded with business. Can you take credit for that?
I hope a little bit.
Yes.
But no, that was a community effort. My role, I had several roles in that, but so did lots and lots and lots of other people. Backing up, Destin, the citizens of Destin voted to incorporate finally in '84. That was the third go-round for their incorporation try. And it became more and more obvious. I wasn't here, but it's all in newspaper accounts and history. There was a county commissioner named Mike Mitchell. Nice guy, real nice guy, also a very bright fellow. And he represented the south end of the county. And he was getting barraged with complaints and phone calls and letters and all kinds of stuff. We didn't have email back then, from Destin and folks trying to do business in Destin or trying to stop business in Destin or whatever they were doing in Destin they were doing. And because you had people trying to stop it too. Street sign went down, they called Mike Mitchell, the county commissioner. And long story short, Mike says, they need to incorporate. And at that point, they stopped funding things for Destin. When I got to town in March of '85, there were 3 street signs in the entire city. 3 on Main Street and 1 on Kelly. I'm sorry, 3 on 98, 2 on 98 and 1 on Kelly Street, which, if you know that, that's a back street. That's where the elementary school is. There wasn't another sign in town. And I know exactly why. Mike Mitchell told me this himself. He says, Jack, you wouldn't be in Destin if I'd have paid for all those signs out of his budget. So that's sort of how that all happened. Now, when I first arrived, it was clear to me that there were 2 communities in Destin. There was the fishing community and the condominium folks. And they weren't shots fired, or at least not many. But they basically were in a verbal war. And it was clear and obvious that something had to be done. In fact, on the first city council, we had 3 fishermen, 3 business types, one of which was a condo guy, and then a 4th one who, he was the swing, if you will, swing boat. And we all recognized the issue, and the issue was we're a community divided. We've got to bring them together somehow. And pretty soon it became obvious that that's what was happening. There's 10,000 stories. I'd bore you to tears. But a few things happened. Some of the anti-incorporation folks tried to get the vote, sue and get the city to dissolve. Some of the pro-incorporation folks tried to sue the anti-incorporation folks and make them pay the freight. And neither of which were successful, but it was that kind of stuff. And as that progressed, the community, both the, I'm gonna call them the condo folks and the fishing community, they saw the problems with not talking to one another. And within about 2 years, they were getting along good. They were serving on committees together. They were showing up. Our council meetings were slam-packed for the first 24, 30 months of incorporation. And they still are pretty well attended. But after about 2.5 years, they started coming together. In addition to that, we had a benefit that most new municipalities don't get in Florida, anywhere else for that matter. There was a thing called the Resource Management Plan, and this affects coastal areas. And it's a Chapter 380 of Florida statutes document activity. Without, again, try not to bore you. I presume you all know what an area of critical state concern is. That means Key West is an area of critical state concern. You want to build a garage in your house, you get a permit from Tallahassee. Tallahassee runs Monroe County and the city of Key West, they have some authority, but you'd be amazed at how little they have because they're an area of critical state concern. Well, a prerequisite in the law is that they have to do this resource management plan and come out with findings, and the governor appoints the members and all this rigmarole. Well, this had just gotten underway for South Okaloosa and South Walton counties when we incorporated. That gave us a focus. We didn't want to be an area of critical state concern. We wanted anything but that. And of course, the state wanted it. They wanted Destin, but more importantly, they wanted South Walton. Not more importantly, but their trophy was going to be South Walton County. That's what they were after. Didn't come to pass, thank goodness. But that became pretty clear because it was widely covered in the media, television and print. And once even the folks that didn't want the city to be there started thinking, oh my goodness, I'm glad that didn't happen. Because if I wanted to, build a dock or a pier, of course you still got to get permission from the state, but not the same. It's a different thing. You got to do that anywhere in state waters. So that helped us. And the next thing that happened is the Growth Management Act of 1963. 1983. That's what 85. Glitch Bill 86. The county and the cities, including Crestview and Destin and all 9 municipalities in Okaloosa, had entered into an agreement, an interlocal agreement. And in that agreement, the county, and there were grant funds, a couple of $1 million worth. The county was going to be in charge of preparing the comp plans and hiring the consultant to do all the comp plans. Well, they hired a firm out of Tallahassee who meant well, did not have a clue. Mr. Connor was here then. They stumbled around and messed around, and they were missing deadlines, and the content was pretty weak, and everything else. Well, the managers get together back in those days. I guess we'd get together once a month and talk about common problems and whatnot, usually over lunch or breakfast. And we were talking one day. Said, "Is anybody else happy with Barrett, Destin, and Carlin? What's the firm? BD&C?" And oh, this is awful. This is terrible. Well, I was a planner. I went to college graduated with a degree in planning. Blah 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 blah. And I can do this, because I'd studied the law plenty as my role as city manager. And we got in and assumed the contract with the county commission blessing and the municipality's blessing, and said, sure, they'd probably rather have had Mickey Mouse than who they had, but that doesn't matter. But we got in and we built comp plans, and we built one in Destin that provided for, it was a pro-business plan, and it was marketed that way. When we were in the public hearing process in Destin, they were often asked. Sometimes I would answer, sometimes the council members would answer. But is this pro-business, pro-recreation, pro-environment? What is this? It's pro-growth. We want to grow the community. Of course, with the assets that Destin enjoys, that really wasn't a hard thing to do, grow the community. But that was the desire of the city, and that's what we put into their plan. We did the same in Crestview and many other places. I think since we've been Crestview's consultant, we've gone from the third largest city in the county, population-wise, to the largest, and from the second largest city, area-wise, to the largest. So you're now the largest city in Okaloosa County. I think the third largest in the Central Time Zone.
Fourth in Northwest Florida.
Fourth in the Central Time Zone.
Yes.
Yeah. So you've enjoyed some pretty good growth. Not always the way you want it, but the taxes keep keep coming in. The customers still expect service. Your people do shop in your stores and eat in your restaurants. I just wish we had more downtown. So it's all that. All those are the things that contributed to Destin's boom, together with visionary private sector people. I'm not going to call names. That's not fair. But there's a good half dozen or more private sector investor types, developer types down there that had vision, and better vision than most of us. And they saw it clear enough to invest hundreds of millions of dollars.
Thank you, Mr. Dorman. Any other questions before we
Yeah.
move on? Yes, sir.
My concern, regardless of the type or form of government, is that we have to continue remembering that we are a democracy. And
Yes.
the people have to have the input,
Absolutely.
whether it's strong manager, strong mayor, weak, or whatever. And that's my deep conviction that all these other things will happen, but it must go back to the people.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Right.
Technically, though, we're a republic, as opposed
Sure.
to, yeah,
But we're also
democratic
democracy.
republic, yeah. Yeah, we freely elect our representatives.
That's my point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Any other questions?
I do have another question. I've had the opportunity to look at quite a few charters, and some charters, they have the department heads reporting to the city council. Other charters, they have the department heads reporting to the city manager. Which do you see as the most advantageous?
Reporting to the manager.
Why is that?
Again, I'm back to the efficiency thing. We get things done more quickly, less expensively. and most of the time, in a more timely manner.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Dorman, for
Thank-
coming out.
Thank you
and,
for tolerating me,
being
and
with us.
I wish
Thank
you
you,
well
sir.
in this.
You bring us a lot of experience, and we might call on you again as time
Feel
goes on.
free.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Gaylord and I talk at least once a week, sometimes more.
Thank you.
So just let me know. It's nice to see you all. Some of you see you again. And if y'all don't object, I'm gonna go ahead and head south.
sir.
There's a little traffic with the 4th of July. Y'all might have heard about it.
Yes.
Call it 85 parking lot.
Yes. Well, just a quick aside, I don't want to infringe on your meeting. The last council meeting I had to attend was at 6. No, it was a planning board meeting. Planning board meeting. Was at 6. I got here at 6:20, and I had left Destin at 4:30. Well, I knew this was a 6. I said, that's not gonna happen again. So I left Destin about 3:15. I went to Mike Carroll's and got me some lunch. And then came in here and got cool out of the heat.
One more question before you do that, because you kind of tied into it, if you don't mind, sir. Would you say, or I don't want to put words in your mouth, that a city manager would help project up and out and allow for the state or others to see Crestview differently, to where we could fix some of the parking lots like 85?
Sure.
And the efficiencies, not only in the government, but in all of the different infrastructures, et cetera?
I can't really testify to this, but my impression, and it's only an impression, is that the state would prefer to see communities with a manager, because they know where to go. And often, some of the communities that I've served, especially the State Land Planning Agency, now it's called DEO, I was their contact, not a local government official. And that was this way in Crestview for quite some time. So they would much rather be talking to an official of the government than a consultant. Now, some consultants have a better relationship with the state bureaucrats than others. I think ours is pretty good, but it ain't perfect. But, so yes, to answer your question directly, yes, I do think it would be beneficial.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We appreciate it, Jack.
No problem.
We-
Y'all have a nice evening, and happy 4th of July.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time, and be safe. Okay. The next item is evaluation review of the current charter. Teresa, would you like to lead us into that, if you will? Do you visualize individuals going, members of the committee, taking a shot at this as we go? We've had a couple of weeks to look at that. We can.
I was going to say, if it's either way you want to do. If you want me to lead you into it, fine. If you rather simply begin with questions and answers and comments amongst yourself, I'm only here to spark the synapses to fire. What y'all need
I
is discussion there.
I think we need you to kind of get the ball rolling,
Okay.
if you understand what that means,
Okay. Well, we, of course, y'all have studied your charter, and this is the version from the Muni Codes, which have, they have done their editorial reviews and have different things where they have omitted parts of it due to home rule and different other state laws that have taken place. We do have an elected mayor, a council, and a city clerk. And we won't go through, I don't think it's necessary to go through the time frame that we use. We have 5 councilmen that are elected. They rotate it, at 3 and 2 during their election. We do have an elected clerk and an elected mayor. Their powers, just simplistically, city clerk is over the financial department, and if we look in, well, Article 3 actually has the mayor first, so let's go the mayor is actually to enforce the laws and an ordinance, and that he has the ability to veto ordinances. He does not vote, the city council votes on the ordinances before them. However, the mayor has the right to veto. So, he serves as the head of the police department, and you have a question, or, okay.
No, ma'am.
Okay.
I'm just
Okay.
tuning in.
Okay. The mayor has the fire department and the police department is his responsibility. And, he works very diligently with Mr. Cadle works very diligently with, Tony Holland, who is now our new, fire chief, and Tony Taylor, who has come on board as our police chief. And they interact and have meetings and priority, just as any other department has among their staff. We have the city council, and they have a president and a vice president there. They're responsible for the legislative part. They pass the ordinances. They, well, listen to the public. They try to obtain a visual of exactly what the citizens want in their city, and that's their effort to secure that. Let's see, the city clerk, she handles the, the council also is responsible for the growth management department and public services department. And then the city clerk is over the financial part of the city, and which also includes the utility department. She's responsible for tracking the utility use, such as the water, the sewer, the garbage within in the city, and if it does pass, also the stormwater would fall under that too, if it falls in as part of the reuse water. So in our charter, you will see that there's also a city attorney, which is under contract. They are not a elected official or anything. They're simply a contracted person by the council. You see we have a city physician. That does not exist. And I think they've already removed the other various members that were in the old charter. Is there any question about the structure we have now, such as the mayor, the council, and the city clerk, whereas the mayor is over the fire and the police? The council is over the growth management, which was previously called administrative services, and the public services, which at one time was called public utilities. But they're the people that do all the infrastructure maintenance and all. City clerk is over the financial aspect and the utility billing services. And pretty much, they have removed all our edits out of the charter for your streets and lands. That now falls completely under public services. And the passage of ordinances is completely under the council's preview. Anytime there would be indebtedness or they need some type of expenditure, a department would actually bring it to the council in the form of when they do their budget once a year. They would bring forth a line item on their budget as something they would like to plan. So the whole budget process is pre-planning for the next year. And it's a sort of a long process. The city clerk, who is the financial, will prepare the preliminaries for that. It's circulated among the department heads. They have their input as to what is needed. Then it goes back, she recompiles, she presents it to the council, who has the final decision on the budget itself. Now, the council members are each review those budget, usually line item by line item, with the department heads. So council is very involved in the day-to-day processing of the budget and the review and knowing where the money's spent, so that they are responsible to the citizens to make sure that they get the best bang for their buck out of the dollars they have. So, and if there is something that they need to have a debt, then that is passed at the council level, like such as we actually have a bond system on our sanitary sewer treatment. And that's where a lot of the impact fees, that impact fees that we collect on water and sewer, help feed that payment so that it can be maintained, and also expansion of it. So we have impact fees for a certain reason to pay something. So if there is an indebtedness, such as if they were going to buy the new fire truck, there would be a process of how it was going to be, how it would be paid, and that would go to the city council to decide. But it would be presented via a department head interacting with the city clerk. And this is the way it's currently routed. So if a department head needs something, they work with the financial in order to present it to the council. And that's all the way around. As the being elected officials, they have a small salary. They do, but it's not anything that is extraordinary in the city of Crestview. But each the mayor, the city clerk, and each councilman do collect a small salary. So
Who determines that?
it's
City council.
the city council. The city council votes on all monetary items, even their own, which I think there's over the budget years, one of their items is that they don't accept any raise in their compensation, and they've done that for years.
The clerk salary is set before election.
Before election.
If they want to give election, and the clerk's salary can't be reduced for that term of 4 years. So her salary, whatever she begins with, they can increase her salary if they see fit, but her salary will not be cut.
They
to
can't
doing
reduce
that.
it, just as they don't reduce the mayor's, but all monetary decisions end at the council level.
Yes.
And that's their venue. Now, is there some question about what our charter entails and what is missing from this? The scope of services for certain areas of it. In the real world, the way that we actually operate now is not precisely verbatim to the way our charter reads. It's especially when you get down to the day-to-day operation. As one thing, the charter has not been revamped in quite some time. So as with a lot of things, the language of it, the processes need a little upgrading and a little consideration there. And dependent of duties of the different avenues, whether a mayor, like I say, we have it split. We have a mayor that is over 2 departments. We have a council over 2 departments, and we have a city clerk that's over basically 2 areas. So it's just not a typical form.
How is it determined, by whom is it determined that the charter is examined or should be examined?
Could
That's
I offer?
Oh, you can go
example?
ahead. You go ahead.
If you will, during the last charter review, that was a recommendation of the review committee that periodically, it had a requested number of years that the charter would be reviewed and updated as necessary and to be done. And I hope that will be one of the findings of this committee when we submit our recommendation to the city council, is that periodically, and let them go ahead and set a time frame to establish that review of the new charter that's adopted, because times change fast. A lot of things are happening fast, some don't move quite so fast, but it would be a good idea to have that presented to them, so on a timetable, they would establish a charter review committee to see what needed to be updated in the charter. Not change the charter, but just update the charter to meet the needs of the current time that we're in at that time. So that was one of the recommendations. And just a thought, if anyone is concerned in the news, the media has a better hand on this than I do, that the Charter Review Committee recommendation to the council was made, the ordinance was read, I understand, on the first reading, and the second reading was coming up because there's a strict advertisement requirement for ordinances such as that. And it was decided just before Friday, I understand before a Monday, that was coming up, that it was withdrawn from the agenda for that upcoming council meeting. I won't go into any details why that occurred, but it did happen. So it had been read the first reading for the public hearing, and also was scheduled for the second reading of that ordinance, and it was pulled on a Friday before the meeting on
For
Monday.
no explained reason?
I think there's an explained reason, but I'd rather not give it to you. The media has a better handle on that than I do.
It is a question that I have phrased as something I think we as a committee need to know so that we don't recreate the same problem. You know, and I think we'll get to, when will we actually cover this during discussion?
Yeah, when we
Okay,
go down
yeah,
to
I know,
discussion.
cover that, sure.
I have a question. In our current form of government, you as a department head, do you have 5 supervisors?
Yes, sir. Actually, sir, I work directly for the 5 members of the council. Growth management is of the oddest department that you have. Growth management, you're the growth management director because you are the administrative assistant to the council. And when you relate into the code actually tasks the administrative assistant to the council to numerous duties. But keep in mind, at the time that they were figuring out those duties, they were a very small city. They were very small. I not only am responsible to the council as the administrative assistant, which I prepare research for them. You have to remain totally unbiased. That means you do not state any of your own opinion in any of your research. You actually provide things that they need, also administrative duties that they need, such as if they're going to conferences and stuff, we gather for that data for that. For a while, we were responsible for making all reservations and hotel accommodations and all. And graciously, Miss Roy has actually taken over some of that particular items for us because we are short some of our staff in the back. On the other level, you are required to do the accounting for the building and inspection, for the planning and zoning, for the code enforcement, for the CRA, and for the administrative services of the city. So that's what we're tasked with ours. And each department has a particular guideline, particular responsibility, and a particular duty to provide information to the council in where they're succeeding, where any problem might be coming up, or any need they may have. Such as just taking my own personal case, I have brought several things to the council with the urgency that this needs to be looked at. This needs to be considered. And being the legislative board, they must weigh the weight of each individual item as to the number of citizens it affects, the dollars and cents of it. If there is some type of solution, does it need additional legal expense? And each other department does that particular thing. It's just that, like with our department, it's usually code related, regulation. Whereas if you're looking at some of like your public services, they're looking at, I need equipment, I need supplies, I need personnel, I need to build this road, and I need this amount of dollars to do this. So each department is unique in what it does. Each department is unique in how they respond back to their supervisors.
One more question, and thank you for that. I appreciate it. I want to echo Mr. Dorman's comments that Crestview's been blessed with talented employees over the years. But I'm curious, for our department heads, is there any mechanism to provide employee performance feedback to them?
In our department, there is.
Okay, good.
In our department, we believe in having department meetings.
Right.
We believe in the interchange of ideas from the employee, because after all, they are working very closely with the public. And we've made several improvements in our own department because it generates from a citizen who has a need. Okay, we have several citizens that has this common need. Is there a way we can supply information or do something differently? Like we've even at times redone the times and hours we're available for pre-apps to better fit the schedule of the engineers and the architects and all that need to be there. Just a simple thing as that can help facilitate an easier meeting. It also facilitates better communication with a prospective business developer. Sometimes you may actually have to tromp the mud with them if they want to go and see a particular area and how it affects there. Sometimes it's just a matter of putting on your mud boots and saying, this is it, and this is the ground, and this is how your sewer would be connected in. So we do a lot of things like that, and we are very in tune with our own department, as well as evaluations.
Right.
I believe very much so that you should evaluate your personnel. I think you should challenge your personnel. You should always have your employees striving for improvement of their own self, whether it's understanding a skill better and being able to evaluate that, yes, this person has this skill, well, he really needs to be doing this. and you match their skills with what they best excel with. That way, they're more productive, more efficient, more better use of your dollars.
Is there anybody specifically providing that to specifically the department heads? It sounds like you're doing an amazing job, though.
That's
Taking care of your
that's what
department.
we do. That's what we do
Okay.
in our department. And I'm sure, like public services, they evaluate. They're a larger department. They have a different level, so that Mr. Steele has his assistants that actually, and then you have your boots on the ground. And that evaluation of those employees trickle right up to the department head, who will call those people by name and know where they're weak at. And he does an accounting of his personnel just as we do. I'm not familiar with how the police or the fire do it. I'm sure they've got rules and regulations. But I do know that our reporting system is very similar.
But is this at the discretion of each?
It's at the discretion of the department head.
Okay. There's no written guidelines or anything?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
As coming on board, y'all know I've only been on board a short term as a department head. There is a shortage of written information and written procedures. It's sort of, I guess because we were here so long with the people that exist, you kind of know the duties that you've got to fulfill, and it's at your discretion. You need to fulfill that. You need to fulfill it with the people you have, with the dollars you have, and make sure that the work is accomplished.
Mr. Reese, can you name some of those deficiencies that you speak of? Like what needs to be written or more exactly?
Well, I think there needs to be an HR person. I think there needs to be a standardized person. We do have a personnel manual. That personnel manual needs to be updated. Just simple things like that. That you need to be able to obtain without difficulty.
So in your case, you say you report to the city council.
I report to the city council, yes.
So in an evaluation process, who evaluates you? I mean, you got 5 people or, here, so who actually would say, Ms. Teresa, this is what
President of
you
the
are
council.
or are not doing?
The president of the council always has the voice of the council.
Okay, so that
So-
person would be the one that would be.
Mhm. That's the person that I communicate. We've had several presidents over the last couple of years. So each year, the president is either reelected or a new person comes in, and we've had new ones. And I've interworked with the president, and they do have different requirements. They have different evaluation processes. They have different suggestions. They have different whole different format of how they want something produced back to them. And you have to, as the administrative assistant, you must tailor in how you're preparing your stuff to go back to be pleasing to the president so that he can facilitate his job in the most timely way. If they want charts and pictorials, and that helps them perform best, that's what we provide. If they want reports and calculation sheets, that's what we provide.
So as each one takes presidency, they let you know what it is.
What
that
it
they
is
expect from
they expect
your
from me.
office.
And I'm sure they do that with the other departments, because this council that we have now interconnects with every department head. even though they may not be over your police and your fire, they still interact personally with those department heads, and also the library.
Thank you.
I'd like to make one positive comment at this time, that the recent Board of County Commissioners has accepted the fact, if we were talking about the Highway 85 parking lot out there, that the county is acknowledging they have some responsibility for the traffic generated. So does the south end of the county, the whole county impacts the congestion on Highway 85 or further on. And I'm glad to say that the current Board of County Commissioners are looking at that, and I'm glad that one of our county commissioners, hometown guy, is pushing pretty hard to help move that work along, that acceptance of some of the responsibility of helping relieve the congestion on Highway 85. I won't go into any of the bypass proposals that are on the table, but at least we've got the state of Florida, FDOT, helping out with the county and the city to correct some of the deficiencies, hopefully.
On a side note of that,
Yes,
the FDOT did come and address the public service and myself specifically on items, which that don't sound like a big deal, but that is a big deal for them to reach out directly to the city to interact with the departments themselves.
I would think so.
Yeah, it's usually, according to the representative from the DOT, the FDOT allows the needs of the municipalities to percolate up from the TPO. And they had noticed that there was no Crestview percolating up. So when they had come across the bypass off of PJ Adams, where they want to reroute that through the part of the sanitary sewer treatment plant spray field, so they wanted to come and speak directly with us. We now possess contacts, personal FaceTime with people, numbers for agencies that we can help, numbers of representatives that we can reach out to. So that's just a side note. I know it has nothing to do with the charter review, but
Well,
it
it
does
does.
show
It
some
does.
very plus.
Communication.
Yes.
We show, and Mr. Dorman made the point, that you have this contact person, it's easy for them to, like the manager, to have the go-to person. In this case, they know you and Wayne, but as a manager, they have that go-to person that's right there available all the time.
Right.
Okay.
We've been to several of the District 3, and yes, they do like a little FaceTime, and that just gets Crestview out in front. Do we want to run into the forms of government, that being the next item? Or do you
just-
want to open up for some
Just mention those, if you will, just for the record, then I think we'll move forward.
With some-
We have about 17 minutes to go.
Right. In the basic forms, we have the council manager, we have the commission, we have a council with a weak mayor, and a council with a strong mayor. And what that weak mayor, strong mayor would reflect would be the responsibility of the person, either an administrator under a strong mayor who would take care of all the department heads, or the weak mayor would actually put your management more in tune with the council, so that the manager would report directly back to the council. So,
Okay, so thank you
And
for that.
we will
Any
have more on
questions
that next time.
Before we move forward, move on. Okay. If you will, the committee discussion, we open it up for comments. What would you like to see? And also bring this up at this time that Teresa has the handout. So is there any comments at this time that you would like to make?
I believe she's going to be covering some of the comments I have in the actual
Okay.
presentation.
This was, if you have comments, requirements, questions, or something you wanted presented to the board, you can email them to me. I do not respond to you back by email or discuss your comments with you, as we are all under the Sunshine Law. So, but if you email them, we will incorporate them and disperse them during a public meeting in order for them to be discussed.
Just to make sure everything's clear and why I actually did that, maybe it was a misunderstanding on my behalf. I was trying to facilitate agenda development and build the agenda, because that was when we left the meeting. That was one of the biggest questions, is how do we, we knew that Mr. Dorman was on the agenda, but I wasn't really aware of many other things. So we're trying to continue populating and keep this ball rolling in the right direction, since we have such a limited timeline.
I understand, and that's good, because the committee, as we begin to gain a little more knowledge about what it is we want to do, we'll start opening it up and start discussing these things. Like I want to start asking the question of the committee, what what do you see is the problem with our government? Those kind of things. If we're here to consider a different form of government, what are we doing bad now? What do we need to correct? Those type of things. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Item 1 under the request for discussion was to have an open discussion for the meeting to let everyone know. It's a little bit small. Okay.
Would you like?
Let 5 minutes per speaker. Open the meeting to free up the air where personal beliefs stand and why. You've had 2 weeks, so it says believe that everyone knowing where everyone stands, it will help expedite the questions, and also if everybody believes one item over another, they might not have to dwell on any other topic. So, do you wish for me to complete the whole list before we address them, or you want to address them one at a time? Or do we?
Well, for the sake of the
Time?
meeting tonight, just go down the list.
Okay, read them into the record?
And
I
if
will.
anyone wishes to make a comment,
Okay.
Address the chair.
Okay. Short synopsis of the failures of the Charter Change Committee that led to the failure of the referendum legitimacy prior to the ballot attempt. Number 3, reach out to ISP and other independent professionals willing to present topics or answer questions as to individual not representing ISP for their corporation, but as industrial experts within their individual fields. And that would be such as under budget and accounting differences between the types of government, the ISP, CPA, financial professional. They give us a suggested speaker there.
That's the chair, Ms. Teresa. That's just the chair. It's just a point of contact.
Okay. The Okaloosa County EDC, and that is Nathan Sparks, and we discussed that. Mr. Robinson actually requested that be done at the last meeting. And it says, I'd like to hear from a retired police, fire chief, public safety, from both the city manager and a strong government, preferably outside of our community. That way, pros and cons for both are not a book answer, but true experiences working under various environments. And we have Ted, you want to give me this name?
Listjauer,
Yes. Okay.
I believe is how it's pronounced.
Okay, good. And he is a retired police chief under city manager and strong management structure. And then need to know legal requirements to hold a town hall meeting, and maybe having a town hall meeting to engage segments of the community that they're, that would be citywide, and citizens and business owners, whereas concerned citizens would like to ask the committee different questions, a method for that to take place.
Okay,
So-
thank you. What, would you be asking for some kind of selection of these topics, or just keep this handy? And now, I certainly would like to see the open discussion
Mm-hmm.
portion, 3 to 5 minutes, about a particular topic. We say 7 times 3, so that'll take up about first 30 minutes, and get us in after we get going. I would like to see that at least one time.
Would you-
Then when we'll have a good feeling.
Are we directing that as in the next meeting? Would you
I
like
would
to,
ask-
as
I-
agenda
just
one?
As a consensus of the committee.
If I may, real fast. The reason I actually placed this in here is just like she stated, I think that there are some topics that we as a whole can do mini consensuses just as we go, and then we know that we don't need to come back and reiterate or pontificate about a particular topic that's null and void for the city as a whole, and we can really start to channel and focus on what we need to be talking about.
Well, I agree
So-
with that. To help move it along, I mean, if we're all in agreement with a city manager form of government, and say that right up front, we could just eliminate these other topics and go right to it, and discuss the duties and responsibilities, and look for a ordinance, sample ordinances of cities.
Charters.
Yeah, or charters, charter ordinance for the charter, yes, charter changes. But that certainly moves it along, and I'm like to take that. I wouldn't say we incorporate all of these into it at one time, but that's a good starting point. I think if that's the consensus of this committee, well, we would like for you to provide time on the agenda next month.
Okay, agenda next month, you're going to have,
We'll have a show of hands to include the short discussion from individual members. If you wish to speak, okay,
Sure.
okay.
okay, so a short discussion. Do we have a particular topic that you want that discussion to be on?
I would say the current charter. They have got having looked at it, they have some feeling about it. If it's
So
just-
lead off next meeting with what do we say, a 5-minute info from each member on the current chart?
Observations. on the
Whatever,
current charter.
we're just going to utilize the current charter, okay?
that'd be
And
fine.
that will secure, you got 7 at 5, yeah, that would secure at least the first third of your meeting,
Yes, ma'am.
or the last third, or whichever, where you
And-
want it.
and,
First third?
Yes.
Okay, sir?
The others, about the last charter, I would just suggest, for the sake of your question, to address Mr. Kyle Zestmeyer after this meeting, and he can provide that with you, and if you see fit to bring that back to us, or even if you feel the need to have Mr. Zestmeyer to address the board with your comments that you sent to Teresa, to include that, and maybe she can schedule Mr. Z to appear before this committee for a brief presentation.
I think the terminology is incorrect there. It was not a charter change, it's a charter review committee.
Okay, for the prior.
I think that word needs be changed.
But anyway. Is that acceptable to you?
That is fine. I just wanted to make sure, the intent of that entire bullet point was to ensure that we don't recreate the past.
Yeah.
I understand. I tell you, it was no fault of the committee.
That's what I just want to make sure.
Okay.
In actuality, it was the Charter Review Committee had completed their job, and it had rolled into the city council realm for nearly a year. So it was nothing to do with the Charter Review Committee. That the review committee was actually praised by the council for their excellent work. Now, we do have historical minutes for most of the action of the last review committee, as well as the city council meetings where they continued their work with what data was received from the review committee, if any or all of that would be required.
Okay. Is there anyone else, anything that any of the committee members would request that Teresa, at this time, to include on the agenda for our next meeting? Anyone have a special item?
I'd like to see those minutes, if that's possible.
So you want the minutes for the Charter Review Committee,
Yes, please.
or minutes from the city council meetings?
Yes, please.
A combination of both.
Yes, please.
Okay. One item that was requested from last meeting was the information on the Mr. Studer's visit. I do have one of those minutes. I don't have the original, but I will be able to provide them to you at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other comments?
Well, I do have one, Teresa, and it probably doesn't need to be for next, but just so that it may, if it does take a little bit longer, I don't know how difficult it is to get the current census number per precincts and stuff of that nature, so that when we do start talking a little bit later on about 5, 7, and different requirements, you could possibly provide that information.
Provide the census number,
Census numbers per
For-
precinct.
each precinct.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't tell you that number, but I tell you the population in 1990. 9,986. My, our city's grown almost
Maybe
triple.
more.
We would anticipate that for maybe the first meeting in August, or after. Okay.
Okay. Any other business to be brought before Mr. Cott?
Are you gonna have any comments from the public allowed at these meetings? I didn't see it on your agenda.
Why not?
It's perfectly welcome for you to interject
Yes, the public is welcome
I was
to,
going to say,
make
can
comments.
interject the public wherever the chairman deems necessary.
That's good. Mr. Sismeyer? Yes, sir.
Speaking of the public, part of my news story is there were 3 members of the public, then 2, and I'm counting him as a city official, always a member of the public, and him as well. We still have 1 left. I think rather than me answering questions to one of you, it would be better if I just cover what happened on that last charter when it was quite ready to go to the ballot, really. The ordinance that was mentioned has to go through 2 readings. It was the first reading. There was a second reading scheduled for March 26th in 2012. You can go back and read the city minutes, the minutes of that particular meeting. How many of you were here in the community in the fall of 2011? So all of you were here then. Okay. In that fall, those of us in the media had begun to hear rumors of council members sending email to each other. Myself, Mr. Nielsen, and Mr. McLaughlin of the Daily News did the public records request. I read almost 6,000 emails. I put together what I would call a synopsis of 27 instances where 2 or more council members had engaged in email communications about city business. I took all that evidence to the state attorney's office. They did their investigation. They returned charges on all 5 of the then sitting council members. They appeared in court in March of 2012. After that court time was over and they were all fined $500, allowed to plead no contest, and a slap on the hand, please go take some special training and know not to violate the Sunshine Law. So if Mr. Holly is pretty strong to you, and what you've also heard tonight, you do not want to be one who violates the Sunshine Law. Only one person ever went to jail, and that was over in Escambia County many years before our incident. But what did happen, and again, I documented made of my stuff from evidences of witnesses, the council president, I mean, you've been there so you know, can adjust things on the agendas. Working with the city clerk and sometimes growth management, even on Friday or whenever, or during the week before a meeting, they can make changes to the agenda. The second reading of that ordinance, and it had to be done on that date, all the legal ads have been placed in the papers for the ordinance to call for a placement on the ballot for a vote. The council president, and he knows, and we've talked about this in person about it, was mad that morning after they left court. And he came to the clerk's office and made several changes. There were several controversial topics on that agenda for that Monday, the 26th. And that was one of them that was withdrawn at his request. And then it was changed to a different date. And the hearing was held, or it was discussed, but it wasn't a date that was advertised in the legal notifications. Therefore, it was null and void. So what finally wound up was it got placed on the ballot as like a straw ballot vote. It got a big vote turnout, a very big one, but compared to any previous votes they've ever had in this town for almost anything in any election. But what had happened was nothing that the Charter Review Committee did. I went to every meeting they had. There were many a meeting when I was the only person in here other than the people up there and the staff during those. So I'm hoping we can get more public, and I'm hoping that, Kenny, what kind of numbers have we got watching?
We're about 1,500 right now.
That's pretty good. I'm glad they're out there watching and paying attention to what you do, because what you do is going to be important. With nothing that the Charter Committee did wrong. It was strictly what happens in politics, folks. And somebody got mad because they got caught. And fortunately, I don't think that's happening anymore. I hope not. But that's why they're going to emphasize to you, you got to follow those rules. So it's best that we talk about all of this stuff right here with all of us. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them anytime.
Thank you, Cal. Teresa, you got any closing comments before we call for adjourn?
I think we're good.
And if you will, on the agenda, include comments from the audience. I think we're probably going to generate some audience as time goes on.
Normally, it's there, we're just,
That's fine. It's good. And anyone wishing to speak usually lets it be known if they come and sit through an hour-and-a-half meeting, they'll let you know. Okay, any other business to be brought before the committee? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Second. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned.